Hello, it's a very, very beautiful winter's day here in Lincolnshire, and I'm at the Church of St Lawrence's in Snarford, showing you a view of the lovely Lincolnshire countryside on this December day in the frost. It really is very beautiful indeed. Now, I brought you here to show you some of the wonderful things that are within this church. There really are treasures and splendours within, dating from the Elizabethan and Jacobean period. Now, there was, until the middle of the 17th century, a very large country house here, which has subsequently vanished. There is absolutely no trace of it. It was an Elizabethan prodigy house, grand structure indeed, owned by one of the richest families in Lincolnshire, the St Paul family. And it's their monuments that we're going to see. So the country house was in this general area here, and there is not a trace of it left. But as we will see, they have left their trace inside. So let's go inside. We're heading down here. It's very prepossessing building on the outside, very simple, mostly restored in the 19th century. I'm coming in through the south door.
As you enter Snarford Church, you immediately realise that there's something rather unusual about it. As you look east towards the chancel, you can see the high altar, but it is placed in front of a large structure. This structure is the monument to Sir Thomas Sampool. The Sampool, or St Paul family, it is spelt St Paul, were the lords of the manor of Snarford for many generations in the 15th, 16th and 17th centuries, but their fortunes rose in the mid-16th century, primarily due to their service in Parliament. 3 generations of them were MPs. It was really with Thomas Sampool, who died in 1582, that the family arrived socially, and his monument was erected to fill the whole of the east end of the rather small chancel here at Snarford. Filling the chancel of the church was a quite deliberate act. Sir Thomas was an ardent and pious Protestant. His son George would go on one further and was a Puritan, and the placement of his monument not only gave the monument prominence, but it also prevented the re-erection of a stone altar at the east end of the chancel for the Mass. The monument is an extraordinary example of the Elizabethan monumental mason's craft. It is a tomb chest with a canopy over the top of it that makes it look like an old-fashioned tester bed. Inside are recumbent, lying down effigies of Sir Thomas and his wife Faith Grantham, who was from a very well-connected Lincolnshire family. He is in full armour, and both of them have their hands in the attitude of prayer, clasping their prayer books, an image of their piety. The decoration of the monument is sumptuous, and the monument may well have been the product of the major alabaster workshops at Burton-on-Trent. The whole thing is in the latest Renaissance fashion. It is decorated with friezes of egg and dots decoration, and the posts supporting the canopy are decorated with acanthus leaves, and the whole of the monument is coloured, though the present colour is probably a 19th century recreation of what was originally there. On the top of the monument are kneeling figures of all of Thomas and Faith's children, their 6 daughters, and quite literally placed on a pedestal among his sisters is their young son George, their only son and heir, piously kneeling in prayer. Covered in heraldry showing their social connections, expressing their piety, this monument expresses all the hopes and the aspirations of Thomas Sampool for his family. On the north side of the chancel is a mortuary chapel, and this is dominated by the monument to this son and heir, which is grander still than that of Sir Thomas. The monument to Sir George Sampool, as he became, also commemorates his wife Frances Wray, who is the daughter of Sir Christopher Wray, who is a prominent Elizabethan judge and Chief Justice of the King's Bench. The monument is vast and shows 2 life-size effigies of Sir George and Dame Frances reclining on their sides. George and Frances married young, and their marriage was a good social match, and both young people were very promising. Sir George was once described by Lord Burleigh as one of the best men in the country, while Frances was a person of shining conversation and eminent bounty. A rising star, Sir George served as High Sheriff of Lincolnshire in 1588, as his father had done, and was an MP both for Lincolnshire and for Grimsby in various parliaments. He was knighted in 1608 and then made a baronet in 1611. Again, an exquisite monument, probably produced in Burton-on-Trent, if not in the workshops of Southwark. It is a very intricate and detailed monument. Just look at the detail of the costumes on the two effigies. After 13 years of marriage, Frances gave birth to the couple's only child, Mattathiah. She was a sickly child from birth, and she died in September of 1597 at Coventry, just short of her second birthday. She was being taken by her desperate mother to the healing waters at Bath. Her tiny little effigy, she is portrayed as a miniature version of her mother, is incorporated into the base of her parents' monument with an inscription on it, Oritor Moritor, and a golden rose, meaning that like a rose she arises and dies. To either side of her tiny and poignant little effigy are figures of putti with mementi mori, one extinguishing a torch on a skull. It's a really beautiful and poignant thing. After the death of Sir George in 1613, Dame Frances lived on in her widowhood here in Snarford. Having lost all her family, she was, according to her chaplain, never free from mourning and weeping for a single day. In 1616, after much wooing on his part, Frances married again, this time to Robert Rich, 3rd Baron Rich. It was an odd match, as unlike her first husband, he was far from amiable, being described as a foul and vindictive in disposition and of nasty temper. His first wife, Penelope Devereux, found comfort in the arms of another man. Rich was strapped for cash, and he was looking for a rich widow to marry, and Frances fitted the bill. Frances was no fool, and when she married Rich, she insisted on a marriage contract that allowed her to keep Sir George's Lincolnshire estates. Apparently Rich was near crazed to see himself so overreached by his wife, who hath so conveyed her estate that he is little or nothing better for her. In 1618, Rich purchased the earldom of Warwick from James I for £10,000, and Frances became Countess of Warwick. He died the following year, and Frances erected this monument to him and to herself in Snarford Church, and it is one of the most extraordinary monuments of the period, probably the work of Epiphanes Evesham. A tablet with a portrait medallion in the centre, in which the Earl looks out towards us, and she is shown in profile with a coronet upon her head. It is an odd portrayal, and perhaps suggests a distance between the couple. At his death, with no children for comfort, she retires again to Snarford and to the house that she and Sir George had built, and lives on for another 15 years. She dies in 1634 at the age of 66, but for some reason she is buried at Felsted in Essex with the rich, and not here at home under the two monuments at Snarford. With her died the Sampole family of Snarford. The estates were divided between various descendants of Sir George's sisters, and the house she and Sir George built together has vanished virtually without trace. On the day I visited this church and saw again these glorious monuments to a once great family, whose hopes were caught up firstly in a single boy and then a single tiny little girl, it was a December afternoon, and the light in the church was constantly changing. I hope you can see that from the footage I captured. One moment it would illuminate the alabaster in a golden glow and glint off the gilding and decoration, and at times would cast the monuments into shadow. The words of Job 14, familiar to the Sampoles from the Book of Common Prayer burial service, came to mind. Man that is born of a woman hath but a short time to live, and is full of misery. He cometh up, and is cut down like a flower. He fleeth as it were a shadow, and never continueth in one stay. Thanks for watching.